Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me in the locker room today. I'm Alan Locher. As the World Turns alum, Brooke Alexander is joining us to look back at her memorable role as Samantha Markham Anderson that she played in Oakdale from 1994 to 1997. Hailing from Kailua, Hawaii, I hope I pronounced that right. I meant to ask her. Brooke's journey in the entertainment industry began as a teen model, landing her first TV commercial for Coca-Cola Japan at just 15. With over 200 national commercials under her belt, including for brands like Max Factor, United Airlines, and Coors Light. Her versatile talent shines not only on screen, but also through her voice, featured in an additional over 200 national spots. Following her stint in Oakdale, Brooke transitioned into a successful career as an on-air host, gracing networks and shows such as SoapNet, CNN World Beat, Fox News Channel, and Full-Frontal Fashion Daily. It's my pleasure to welcome to the locker room, Brooke Alexander.
Yay.
Hey, Brooke.
Hi, Alan. Hi. Great to see you. Thank you for having me on. And
did I pronounce?
You did pronounce Kailua correctly.
Okay.
Everybody at home is very happy. You're welcome.
Well done, then. Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you to our mutual friend, Brett Hellman, for connecting us.
Yes, Brett helped assist you in tracking me down because I was a little bit, I don't know, who knows. But yeah, thank you to Brett. And I'm really glad that we did connect.
Me too.
I'm happy that there's still like interest in like soaps and people and the art and the art of storytelling, which is great. So thank you for keeping that alive.
There is. And you know, for a role you left, when you think about it, so long ago, the interest in hearing from you is there. And that's what I love about the connection that these shows, you made with these shows. Kailua, Hawaii.
Right.
What do you remember about your childhood there?
That it was the best childhood ever. I mean, I always thought that every kid had the option to go outside and interact and experience beautiful nature at their doorstep. Like when I was, in my teenage angst years, and I would say to my mom, sorry, did not.
That's okay.
That's Kailua calling. I would say to my mom, I'm like, I'm bored. And she'd say, go walk on the beach. And it would be like, well, of course, and I just thought that every kid had an outlet like that, to do that. But, Hawaii's on steroids. It's like every day, the spirit of aloha gives so much to its people through its natural beauty and the resources. I mean, it's a beautiful place to be, the people and the land. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, like I told you, 11 years ago this week, I was there on my honeymoon for the first time. So
that's so great.
I experienced the beauty of two islands, and our hope is to go back and experience more.
Yeah.
You worked at your parents' hardware store from 8 to 12. What do you remember about watching them run a business and helping out at such a young age?
Well, I think, making me count screws and nuts and bolts when I was 8 and 9 years old was a way to keep, a curious girl busy, right? I was fascinated with the paint shake machine. I would be over there like counting all the screws and the nuts and bolts, and then all of a sudden I would hear that machine go off, and I'd be like, I'll be right back. And there's a smell of fresh cut wood that just like whenever I walk into a Home Depot, it's like I feel like I'm a kid again because the store is so big and there's so much, like fresh cut wood. I'm just like, oh my God, this reminds me of, some of the best childhood memories ever, So my dad was a very gregarious and wonderful businessman and pillar of the community. They belonged to our local racket club, and he was the president of the racket club, and he was in the Rotary Club. So he was well liked in town. And my mom, she was his full partner in the business, and she showed me what it was like to be a successful businesswoman. And she was very strong-headed, very strong-willed, very independent, and the apple does not fall too far from the tree.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, she was amazing.
I wanted to share one of the viewers gaming today is their name. They said, "Not fair. She has not aged a bit."
Well, gaming, you are very sweet, and thank you. You just totally made my day.
You made the varsity basketball team as a freshman in high school.
Yes.
I have to ask, were you watching the game on Sunday?
Are you kidding me? Caitlin Clark? I mean, what, first of all, an ambassador for women's basketball. I still don't know if college basketball, if the girls play with a smaller size ball, and same with the WNBA. But back when I was playing basketball, the first year, which was 1976, when girls basketball had graduated, had expanded from a half court game to a full court game. And because our school couldn't afford to have separate balls for the girls and the boys, we played with, full size men's balls. That's funny.
No, no pun intended.
No pun intended.
What do you think of the fact that the most viewers watched this than any other basketball game ever?
I saw that the ticket prices were almost double from what the men's prices were, and then it was the highest attendance that they've ever had for any NCAA game. And I just, the power to, like, those girls can play. Like normally, like even going to a WNBA game, it kind of, it doesn't hit the peaks that some of the men's. It's just a level of athleticism. It's just the way that God designed us, right? But these girls, they ratcheted up so high, and I was just so proud of our sex and our ability to step in, and like really make it a game,
and make people tune in, which is I mean, in all sports, it is about the viewers and the money coming in, and to see that it was the women pulling it in is really pretty incredible.
But I remember, being a part of a team. And we went to state championships, I think, twice. And it was such a highlight. I can't imagine what it's like at the college level, and especially NCAA Division I. When I went to the college fair as a junior in high school, I came back to my mom. She said, "So how'd it go?" And I said, "Well, Gonzaga University, the guy said that if I make the basketball team, I could get a scholarship." And she was like, "Well, what do you want to study?" And I said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I just want to play basketball." And she was like, "So for $17,000 a year, you just want to play basketball? Why don't you take a year off?" And so within that year, that was the divide in the road that happened,
That's wild.
Yeah.
Modeling at 15, Coca-Cola at 15. How does that happen?
Well, okay, so my sister is 12 years older than I am, and she came back from San Francisco. So I was, I guess, like 14 going on 15. And she took a look at her younger sister, who all she wanted to do was play basketball. And she realized that advertising at that time, that blondes were really coming into, focus. They were using them a lot in advertising, but especially the Japanese were really using blondes in their advertising. And so she had suggested to my mom that why don't I get involved? Why don't I take some modeling classes? And so I signed up for the Gypsy Norton Basic Introduction to Modeling class. And the only thing that really, really put me over the edge with it was that Burger King had just opened up, and my mom would take me to Burger King after she picked me up after my classes. So it was, listen, I think modeling, especially at the time that I did it, was a great opportunity to travel and to learn a business and how to be a business person in a big world, right? And stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself. And I traveled the planet. I mean, I was graced with so many opportunities and so many work experiences that, I mean, it was my launching pad,
Well, getting to travel is an education in and of itself.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And then you're also, as a model, I assume you're making a pretty decent living.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. I was never, look, my era was in the 80s, and that was before the term supermodel came out in the 90s. And I was always kind of I wasn't the cover girl, right? I was, inside the pages. They with makeup and stuff, you could make me look, a lot of different ways, but I was just a different ilk. They're cover girl models, they're advertising models, they're runway models, and I was more like that advertising model. But it was a great opportunity to I went to New York at age 18. I went to Milan that summer and got all these magazine tear sheets, because that's what the young models do, is that they go, well, at least they used to. They would go to Europe because the Europeans would hire anybody. Because it's like we're a dime a dozen. We all go there in the summer, right? So I lived in Milan for 3 months, and then I ended up in Paris in a $10 a night hotel room with the toilet down the hallway. Right, shower in the in our room, but I had to go down the hallway for the bathroom with my boyfriend for a year. For $10 a night. You can't replicate that sort of experience,
I can imagine being in Paris at that age, first of all. Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really, really great. I've taken some adult education classes because I did not enter a, proper college program. But I look at the years that I traveled and worked abroad and in those industries as my education. So I always say I have a BS in the school of life.
That's funny. I love that.
Yeah.
You represented Hawaii in the Miss Young International Pageant at 15,
Right.
and then represented Hawaii again and won the Miss World America at 17. What was pageant life like for you, and was it a good experience? Because you hear mixed from.
Right. Well, I'm not a pageant girl. When I entered into the one in Japan was kind of a fluke, but it was great. It was the first time I traveled without my parents. We had chaperones, but it was like, oh my God, I'm in this completely different, immersed in this culture, right? So it was a really great, I was there for a whole month. It was fantastic. And then when I went to New York, I got to understand, I got an experience of what beauty queens are like. And I'm so not that, And so I remember the whole reason why I got into that pageant was that I was working as a receptionist at my modeling agency, Gypsy Norton Studio, plug out to the kids out there. And I was a receptionist, and I fielded a phone call that came in that said that they needed someone to represent Hawaii in the Miss World America pageant in New York City. And so I took down the information, I gave it to Gypsy Norton, and I said, I'm available. I want to go. Because I always, that year that I was going to take off from school where, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I had been modeling locally, and my mother said, she goes, if you have an opportunity to see where this can lead, you should take it. Right. So here, this opportunity landed in my lap. But Gypsy told me, she said, you're going to have to pay for your own airfare. You're going to have to get your own dress and bathing suit and shoes, but you can represent Hawaii. And so I went to New York, fully with the intention of participating in the pageant because they paid for all room and board, right? But it was in New York City. But then I would spend an extra 3 or 4 days afterwards going around to modeling agencies, like Ford and Wilhelmina and Zoli and so on and so forth. So during halftime of the pageant, Ford came backstage and they approached me and they said, we would love to see you on Monday. Can you come by our offices? And I was like, yeah, my job is done here, right? And so I didn't really, it wasn't like I really wanted to be Miss World America. I just was I was in it to be a part of the experience, to go to the next one, right? And so
opportunities.
Absolutely. So when they called out my name, I went there, I didn't have any family there. It was held at Studio 54, right?
Get out.
Yeah, back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember, they put the crown on my head and I had the roses, and I'm walking down the runway to the end to wave to everybody. And it was you either screw in the light bulb or you wash the windows, right? I don't know what I did, but all I remember is I was looking out at the faces in the audience, and I didn't know anybody out there, and that made me it was kind of bittersweet, but it was also sort of the passing of the torch of letting go of my youth and my adolescence growing up in Hawaii, and now being out in the real world. So it was a great opportunity. I lucked out in many ways, in the sense that the girl that won before me, she got a contract, or she had a contract with Wella Hair Company, because Carter Wilson had great hair, right? I do not. But because we didn't have sponsors, there was not a lot of money available and there was not a lot of responsibility. So Carter got 10,000 grand, a car, and a fur coat. And I got a wool coat and a pair of cowboy boots. And that was it. I didn't have to open up, I didn't have to be there at grocery store openings or kiss any babies or like give any interviews or do any, tours or anything. I just was given the title and then went on to London to participate in the Miss World pageant, which was yet another great experience,
That's awesome. How did you decide or make the transition into acting?
Well, what happened was that when I came back to New York after that, so modeling, I was basically modeling until I was about 26, but around age 24, my agent started telling me that I should start lying about my age. And I was like, wow, this shelf life is really, it's real, right? So I knew that I didn't want to stay in Germany, and I came back to New York, and through my modeling agency, they had a connection with a theatrical TV commercial agency, right? So they started sending me out on auditions. And what I discovered was that I know how to walk and talk at the same time. And not a lot of girls who look like me were able to do that. So I would go in for these auditions, and it was just sort of like, it just kind of came together that the industry started letting me know that, you can make some money here. People want to work with you. And so I signed with Abrams Artists back in 87, 88.
Wow, I had some friends who worked there many years ago. Wow.
Yeah, they just folded.
I know, because a friend of mine was with them. She was
really?
there for voice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. I lost
it.
really great voiceover department because of this,
Yeah,
and
she wasn't expecting it.
No, nobody was. Nobody was, but c'est la vie, here it is, real world, real life, So so that started happening, and I started taking some acting lessons, and I just, I'm a Sagittarian. So it's like, I always look for, where's the open road? Where's the next window opening up? Right. And if it intrigues me and I'm curious about it, I'll go through it. And so I signed up for a class at the Actors Studio, and I had this really interesting acting coach, and he kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, but he pushed me, and so, I just kind of kept at it. So I stayed with them for a while, and then I went out to LA and got into doing TV commercials there and like studying out there as well. And then I guess that would have been when Lawrence Queso and Vince Leaphart kind of showed up in my life when there was a casting for As the World Turns, and I used to, don't fault me for this, but I used to drive past the building. I think it's on Wilshire, the CBS big offices and studios there, right? And I used to always look up at the CBS and I would say, count Brooks dollars. I'd put 2 lines through the S, and I'm like, this is going to work out. I have a good feeling about this. And so I just really enjoyed the opportunity, and I didn't put too much weight into it of like, oh, I got to get this. It was like, just do the best that you can.
So you initially met with Vince and Lawrence out in California?
Yeah, I think Lawrence may have come out for the second round because first there's a general casting, but Vince Leaphart was there, and he's so nice. He's such a gentleman, and I adore him so. And so when I met Vince, that really kind of helped me feel good about, wanting to go through the process as deep as I could. And then Lori showing up, and the two of them at the table, they emanated such a positive energy that it really, you've interviewed a lot of actors. You've worked with actors, right? And basically there's that insecurity that we're all kind of like pushing down all the time. And they just made that room so comfortable to be in that it just allowed me to kind of, just do what I had to do, and enjoy it. I got to enjoy it. That doesn't always happen.
Correct. It doesn't. Yeah. Not everybody walks out of the room saying they enjoyed it. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. In the casting process. Exactly.
Yeah. Did you have to fly to New York then and screen test?
I did. They put me up. What was that French hotel on like 52nd and 8th. And I remember going in, it was down to me and another girl, and we both had to audition. We had a screen test with Scotty Bryce, and it was like, And you know, I didn't watch As the World Turns when I was growing up. I was part of I got roped into the General Hospital Luke and Laura thing.
Yeah.
What year was that? What year was that wedding?
81, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So that was the year that I officially moved to New York. And I'm like, I'm living in the winter, in the dark. There's no beach. There's no basketball court. I'm like, oh, I'll watch General Hospital. So I got caught up with the Luke and Laura thing, you know. So here I am, you know, doing a screen test for CBS and working with Scott Bryce. And it was like, I just couldn't believe it, you know. And Scott's a very giving, not only actor, but an individual.
Yeah.
And he also put me at ease and allowed me to, you know, just to do what I could, you know, do what I can, you know. So that was, I mean, Jordan, I forget Jordan's last name. Jordan is a much stronger actress than I am. And especially even at that time, you know, like she was doing Circling the Round on Broadway, you know, and she, you know, I really learned a lot by watching her screen test with Scott. And, you know, I don't know, divine intervention, you know, I ended up getting the role of Samantha Markham. You know,
that's incredible.
There we go. Let's rock and roll. Let's go.
Let's go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was there someone who took you under their wing when you arrived?
Scott Bryce.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. No, Scott, like I said, he's a very giving individual. And he really, you know, because I was so green, you know, I remember someone gave me like a hardcover script book, right? And so I showed up my first day of work. I've got my pencil, right? And I'm taking notes and direction and everything. And one of the other actors leans in and he goes, yeah, you'll give that up in about 6 weeks. And I always took notes, but I got rid of the hardcover. But yeah, so Scott took me under his wing, and he really made sure that I understood what was being asked of me, but yet gave me the space and the direction. It's like he put bumpers on the bowling alley for me, you know. And I remember probably it must have been, if I started in January, then I think it must have been, if it was summer in Oakdale, so it was somewhere like in June or July, we were doing this scene at the lake in Oakdale, and I was in a bathing suit. And I remember because all these stagehands started showing up with brooms and just standing there. And it was a makeup artist that pointed that out. And I said, you know what? You're absolutely right about that. Anyway, so after that scene, I remember Scott leaned into me and he said, you just had an MCB. I'm like, an MCB? He calls it a major creative breakthrough. You know, and so it was like he was really protective of me, you know, and supportive of me. And for that, I'm eternally grateful, Scott.
I love hearing that. I love Scott. I mean, I grew up, you know, he was there before, you know, you got there. I was watching him. I loved Craig. You helped someone else quite a bit.
You're going to bring up, go ahead. You reveal.
I'm going to show.
I remember being very intimidated by that. And one of the people in the room, Brooke Alexander, who played Samantha, she loved her. She was absolutely terrific. She could see me looking a little intimidated by everything. She came over, said like, I know this seems a little overwhelming. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be great. Don't worry about it. And here's the thing that really made me just fall in love with her. When the time came for me to do my first scene, we'd already done the blocking, which is basically the rehearsal where, you know, where you're moving and standing, all that other fun stuff. By the time I was supposed to be shooting all of this, I'm standing in front of Brooke. She has her hand on my shoulder because she was playing a character who was blind, who was going to be led around by me. And the director was about to call for action. And then she held up her hand. She goes, oh, hold on a second. Hold on a second. She comes over to me, whispers in my ear, Bronson, this is the first time you're going to be doing this. It's going to be the last time that it's going to be your first time. So look around, take everything in, enjoy every moment. How do you not fall in love with someone who does that, right?
Wow.
And just the absolute best. And I took her advice and did exactly that, which is probably why I remember when that first scene was shot more so than any screen test that would have happened, because that's exactly what I did. I just looked around at everything, took it all in, realized this was going to be the last time it was my first time. And
Bronson is such a sweetheart. I mean, he really, really is. I mean, the world is a better place because of Bronson Pickett. He's just one of the good souls, you know?
Absolutely. I knew him way before then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked at Disney, and he was dating one of my colleagues. So we had known each other for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um, Speaking of colleagues, this gentleman just became a grandfather again, and what?
Oh, again. Wait, let me see you. There you are.
You don't want to take a close look. Just
No, 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 no. You look as yummy and delicious as you did back when we were working.
oh,
And
aren't
we
you
were married
sweet?
twice.
Yes, that's right. Twice.
I
Not
remember.
one.
I
No.
think I remember. I think the last time I saw you in person was on 6th Avenue,
That's right.
and,
That's
and
right.
I stopped you and I said, "Hey, wasn't I married to you once? Oh, I'm sorry, twice."
Yeah, I remember that. You were working at Fox at the time. You just had, I
Right.
don't know how old, you had a son,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how old he was at the time, but he was young,
Yeah.
I think. I think he was very
Yeah. He was
young.
about a
And
year
so,
old at that point. Yeah.
yeah,
And now
so
he's going to college.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I know.
He also came home from college last week with a surprise that he did not discuss with me prior, and that is a 20-pound Shepherd Husky mix adopted pup named Koa. And I love dogs. But we have a cat household, and it's a
Oh
very
yeah.
mellow
Yeah.
household. And this dog is just like stirring it up. And I'm like, I told him, I gave him a pink slip. I said, "You two are out today. I'm doing like this thing, for As the World Turns, and you're out."
Yep. 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 Oh
Anyway,
wow.
So
yeah.
do
Well,
you remember
you
meeting?
look great.
Well, thank you. So do you.
Yeah. Wow. I was just thinking about the amazing times we had. It should be for you. It should be hashtag the real Samantha, right? That's
It is
that's
the
what we
real
should do
Samantha. Yeah.
because
Why,
you are the real Samantha.
who's
And
not the real
so,
Samantha, as opposed to Sherry, who came in to
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
hey, I remember because I was out in California when
Right.
I forget who the new executive producer was at that point, but they called me up and they said, "We'd like you to come back." And I was like, "Yay, that would be awesome, right?" And they said, "But you're going to have to come back to New York and audition for it." And I was doing all this hosting work out in LA. I mean, I was busy, busy, busy. And I
Right.
said to them, and just honestly, I said, "You've got almost 3 years worth of auditions, right?"
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing
It
ever.
just, yeah,
I've never heard that in daytime.
I've never heard of that
yeah,
either.
yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah.
of that either.
So
Although yeah.
Well, so I confidently said, I said, "You guys have your audition in New York, and if you don't find somebody that you like, call me back, right? Let's figure this out, right?" Well,
Right.
sure enough, they find another 5'10" blonde whose last name is also Alexander, and I was like,
I know. I was like, wow. Okay, that's strange,
and
right
what?
there. So
The
what?
wardrobe department gave me all of the size 10 shoes that they bought for me because they figured they'd never have another size 10 to
I
dress.
love it.
So now
I
they had to buy
love
all
it.
new shoes for Sherry.
They were really they were really good that way, weren't they? I
Oh
mean,
my
that
gosh, those
wardrobe.
shopping
They were.
trips with
Oh,
Joan. Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Unbelievable. Barney's. We lived at Barney's,
Alan,
right?
my first trip was to Bergdorf Goodman in a
Yeah.
private dressing room, overlooking Central Park. And I'm like, somebody pinch me?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And,
I mean,
you
Yeah.
don't have to put your credit card down.
no, they bought me a burgundy cashmere tracksuit that did not read on camera, but it was 100% cashmere at Bergdorf Goodman. So you can only imagine what that costs retail.
Oh man.
I know.
Oh yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
Those were the days when daytime was paying for nighttime. We used to say,
True. Yeah, they
right?
had Procter and Gamble helping out, right?
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
right. That's
I was thinking back on some memorable moments, and I remember we were doing a scene with Liz, and the location was in Kirk's apartment, and this was during dress, right? So the cameras, unfortunately, were not rolling, but
right.
she does her entrance, and she walks in, and she goes, "Oh, Kirk, I love what you've done with the place. What is the color of those walls? They're like vulva red." Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. I'm amazed I don't remember that, but I guess I sort of got inured to those moments with
Right.
Liz. She was RIP. She was one of a kind.
Oh, I know.
She was a walking. I mean, if you never worked with Uta Hagen, She
Right.
was the next thing
She was
to
the next
Uta
thing.
Hagen. You know,
Right.
it was like,
Right.
fasten your seatbelts. You're going to get a master class in
Right.
how to, you know, and how to do this.
Now, let
And
me go ahead,
Were
sorry.
you both
no.
frightened at the first, walking into Oakdale and seeing Liz in action, and hearing about Liz and then
Right.
finding yourself opposite Liz? I would have been intimidated. Were you
Well,
Yeah.
nervous?
I know I was. I don't know about you, Tom.
I was definitely. But I caught a, I get, this is kind of a boring story and I've told it before, but I kind of caught a break because I had flown in from Los Angeles and where I was living at the time, and it was all crazy. And my first day was with Lisa Brown. So
Okay.
I had a couple of short scenes with her, but I had so much anxiety that my mouth broke out in canker sores.
Oh, no.
So I was taking Ambisol,
Okay.
and my second day was with Liz
Oh, Lord.
and Larry,
Oh,
and Larry
yeah.
sort of looking at me going, oh, good luck, brother. Good
Right.
friggin' luck. But
Right.
I had this Ambisol numbing my mouth,
Oh, no.
and it kind of gave me a style. So I was very minimal. I was sort of talking like this, and I had to kind of do this, and
He's
so
a tight-lip guy.
she thought it was a choice, and she kind of liked it, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I guess I'm
Right.
okay. But it
Right.
was hair raising.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely hair raising.
Yeah.
But it was great when you realized that what was going to happen between us was going to be special,
Right.
and that was going to be mostly due to her. So
Well,
it was cool.
now, do either of you, somebody put this in my ear, and that was, they said that the writers or the producers would add an extra hour, an extra minute and a half for any scene that Liz was in, because she would always go somewhere off, right? Deviate from, like she was never on page, on book, right?
Right.
Always bring it back, right?
Yep.
So we
Yep.
build that extra time in there to allow her to do what Liz does best, and that is to elevate the story.
That's right.
And,
Well, yeah. And they were smart that way, because I remember receiving a nice compliment at some point during my tenure there. It was a Thanksgiving situation out at the Snyder farm, right?
Right.
And they were sort of setting up, the script writers were sort of putting in who was going to be doing what. And somebody said something like, so Kirk's out there and we'll just give him some vegetables and a knife and he'll figure it out. I mean, it was just, he'll do something that's fairly interesting with that. Right. But they used to let us do that. Right. They used to do that. They would take into account what an actor brought to the table. And that was very cool when the producing heads were about that rather than about, control. But Liz helped me write. She helped me learn how to write, because I eventually wrote for World Turns a little bit. Right. And, but we changed, you remember, we all changed the whole friggin' script. I mean, it was like we look at that and go, "Oh no, I said that yesterday. Can't say that today. You have me saying the opposite that I said 2 days ago." And we all just rework the script, and she would lead the charge. But it really helped my writing chops.
Yeah,
because it was very cool. My most amazing moment with you was still that very intense, bizarre scene where we had a sex scene while I was blindfolded because you were blind. And so they wrote in the script, Kirk says, I'll tell you what, if you're having a problem with this, no problem. I won't see either. I'll blindfold myself. And we looked at each other. Tom and Brooke looked at each other and said, are we... What? Excuse me. What?
Yeah.
They're actually serious about this. Sure enough, you put the blindfold on me. We did this lovemaking scene. It must have been February or May, sweeps. And
how were you blinded? I didn't remember the blind.
Yeah. What was that?
Oh, you don't remember
the blind?
there was the plane crash in Oakdale
right.
with
That's right.
Damien and I
Oh,
forget
yeah.
who
Yes.
else was on the plane. And I remember it was going into the Christmas or winter break, right? And I went up to the production office to get all my scripts, to kind of take him to Hawaii with me. I was going to be home for like 10 days or something. And I'm reading through the script and I see plane crash. I'm like, and Kirk, I'm Tom. Anytime you read, disaster, it's like, okay,
right,
who's getting
yeah,
cut?
who's out? Yeah, who's
going
out?
home? And I'm reading this and I'm like, oh my God, are they going to fire me? Right. And then I get to the next script and it's like, she survives, but she's blind.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Now I was leaving for Hawaii the next day. Nobody came and told me that your first day back, you're going to be in a plane crash and you're going to have to play blind. Right.
Right.
So
right.
I went home to Hawaii and my niece was probably about, we were like 12 or 13 at the time. Right. And so we rented Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn and we practiced walking around the house, like bumping into furniture,
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I remember what else. I also was able to connect with a blind woman named Zoraida Morrison, who was with the Lighthouse on West 23rd Street.
Yeah, right.
And she availed herself to me in order to ask whatever questions I had about playing blind. And she was so sweet and so wonderful and so giving. And I just only hope that I could do that honor. You know what I mean? I remember I was one of those teenagers that could cross one eye at a time.
Oh.
And so I started doing that the first day. And the director, I forget who was directing, they said, doesn't really look good on camera, so don't do it.
Yeah, right. Forget authenticity. We have to have you looking good,
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, like nobody gave me any direction. Nobody, nope. But so, I mean, that part was really kind of fun. But I want to go back to the lovemaking blindfold scene with you, Tom. I think
I want to read one of the fans says, Oakdalian says, that's super empathetic and kinky all at once.
Kirk Anderson was wonderfully supportive and empathetic.
Yeah, right. Especially when it came to all of that.
Well, I think this may have been the day that, or the scene that when we finally got it and they said cut, that I broke out blushing and laughing. And you said, what's so funny? And I said, I'm so sorry. I can't help but think about your wife while I'm kissing you. And you said, why? I'm not. It was like, so there's method acting there.
That
right.
was Damien, Margot, and you on the plane.
On the plane, okay, yeah. Well, we all survived.
You did. Well, you did. Well, Damien, did you two hit it off from the get-go?
Who, me and Damien?
No, you and Tom.
Oh, Tom. Yeah, I think so.
We did.
Sure we did.
Absolutely.
We knew each other. Because I remember. Oh God, there were those Gone with the Wind shoot days. It would be a 4-camera setup, and the whole cast was there. So you would do your scene in camera pod 1, and then someone would cross camera to camera 2, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So it was this huge scene that everybody had to do their part. And once the camera moved off of me instead of 1 with Tom, right? I got like some dry cicada in my throat and was like, I'm going to try not to cough because I don't want to ruin it for everybody else.
Right. That was,
And I'm basically about to lose a lung without letting it out. And then Maria Wagner was directing that day. And she said over the loudspeaker, she says, Brooke, I can see you in the background. So why don't you try doing something like acting?
Oh.
And she said, but Kirkadoodle, you're fantastic. You just keep doing you. And I was just like, so, again, it's a professional working situation where you have to learn the ropes. You have to drive your lane. You have to know when you can, put on your indicator and, merge on.
And there was that stuff that was not great where people, and it happens to everybody. It didn't, it sort of happened. I mean, it happened to everybody with Paul Lammers, it was who's the whipping boy this week, I mean, or girl, but the people did get picked on. And I think, and I remember you got picked on a little bit, they're it's like, because if you weren't like a Broadway actor,
Right. Right.
You know, you got picked on because we were one of the few, one of the few shows where I walked into the first rehearsal and I looked around. It was like, oh my God, half the people have been on Broadway in this cast.
Right.
And I'd been on Broadway. I was fortunate enough to have done that. And I knew I knew Lisa and some of those people, but it was a sort of a heavy hitter cast that way. And if you didn't have that background, the directors they did tend to pick on people and try and diminish people a little bit, which wasn't good.
But I once saw Kelly Minahan pull one of the directors over who was picking on her as well, right? And Kelly just basically called her out and said, "Do not do this in front of my team. You got an issue with me. You pull me off set, and you speak with me, in conflict."
That's why I love that woman.
Yeah. No, that's right, and that's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Defends
but you got there fast. You overcame all of that stuff, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we had a lot of fun. That was that was a cool storyline and two storylines.
Well, the band loved Kirk. I mean, they loved Kirk and Sam. I mean,
I liked us together. I thought that
that's right.
There was a great storyline, and there was a lot of flexibility in there for a lot of stuff to happen. Yeah, and they worked with that. They looked for things.
And they connected you immediately to Lucinda, which
that's right.
Made people watch.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm Lucinda's half sister, and then I was Royce's twin, right?
Yeah.
Royce. Oh
Royce.
my God.
Yeah. What do you remember about Terry Lester?
Terry, I don't think I really worked with him very often. I think the first time I met him, like in the green room or wherever, he said, we could be twins. Yeah, you're tall and blonde. Okay.
Yeah. That's right. Because he did have you could kind of be twins. That's right.
Yeah.
But I mean, Yeah,
I didn't have a lot of overlap with Terry. Our storyline didn't. I mean, I think he was living in LA at the time or had moved out to LA. But he wasn't written in as much as he probably could have been, as far as that creating that family dynamic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't. I know that whole thing. Well, that was everything was so strong with Martha Byrne and Liz and that whole crew that I'm sure they didn't want to mess with it. I'm always, I always shake my head because I went to the. I've told this story before, but I went to the producers when they brought on my son, Stephen, who was James Vanderbeek.
Oh, yeah. I remember our wedding. He was there.
Right. Remember that. And he was great. He was a great actor, but he was a kid. And I went to the producer. I said, you sign this guy. Make this a storyline because this could be a real thing. This kid has really got something. Right. They're like, nah. And then, 4 years later, Dawson, hello.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, maybe I should be an agent. I certainly have a nose for who's got it, who doesn't. Yeah, right.
Brooke, what do you think you learned working opposite Liz when you think back on?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I was really sorry to learn about her passing, because she was just such a beautiful soul, both one-on-one, whether it was professional or personal. And she was a unicorn. There are not many people like Liz that come around in a lifetime, and in our little world and how far it extended, she really was unique. And again, those scenes where, you weren't quite sure where she was taking the script, the scene, right? She taught me to be a great listener. Mm-hmm. Part of being an actor is not just acting, it's reacting. And, I think soap opera actors get a bad rap when they say, oh, just phone it in. You know what I mean? It's like you don't step it up every day. Liz showed up there and she set the bar high in every scene, every take. I remember one scene. She says, now, darling, the scene calls for me to slap you. So I'm going to slap you. Not very hard, but it will be a slap. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
So she slapped me rather hard, right? And she's like, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm fine." And they're like, "Okay, cut. Let's do it again." So I think she got 3 back in there, but she just elevated everything. You had to be on your toes. You had to be on your game with her,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I just always loved being in scenes with her.
Right.
And when there was a particularly iffy script,
Right.
I remember this would happen with you, me, Scott Bryce, same
Right.
thing. We'd all sit there and we'd all go, okay, what's happening here? That was
Right.
always the question. What's really happening here?
Right.
And we'd break it down. It's like, I want this. What do you want? You want that? Well, okay, fine. Let's try it this way.
Right.
And we're talking about a 15-minute rehearsal.
Right.
Blocking rehearsal. We're doing all this work in blocking rehearsal.
Right.
And they think they're just blocking us for camera, but we're actually doing this work. And that was so you learn to be real efficient. But yeah, I love that comment about listening. I mean, somebody once said, "Yeah, don't be interesting, be interested."
Exactly.
And that's a good rule of thumb.
It really is.
So and Liz Hubbard made us all very interested.
Ellen, I watched one of your previous interviews with Scott Bryce, and he was describing this scene where Lucinda is just berating him, right? And while she's like saying, "You're loathsome, you're offensive, I can't stand you," right? She's like caressing his face and rubbing her fingers over his lip, completely contradictory to the emotion of the scene, right? And that was Liz.
Yeah.
She just took things out of what you could settle with being expected. She always brought the unexpected.
She really saw, like, I don't even know the words, but humanity or things in people that people don't see themselves. Like, she just really had this sort of aura about her. She was, like you said, she really is a unicorn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and she knew too that she was as dominant a personality and a technician as she was. She knows that this is still a team sport,
right?
And so if everybody around her kind of sucks, she's not going to look good either. I mean, she will look good a little bit. But it's not going to be long-term success.
Right.
So as you say, Brooke, she would help people in her own way, sometimes with tough love, get better and be the best they could be, because ultimately we're serving the show. And we're serving the show by serving the scene, and we're serving each other, that way. And so it was very cool to be a part of that.
I love that, how you described how we'd be in rehearsal and you guys would be rewriting your lines and your scenes and really unearthing, bringing to light what your objective was in that scene, like what you were doing there, right?
Yeah.
And just to make it work, because sometimes the writing didn't connect.
Right.
Sometimes it was all catch up from what happened last week or the episode before.
That's right.
And you have a new writer who doesn't know your characters, and you guys who play them over and over again know them so much better than the writer.
Can I tell you a real novice story from like my first, first month on the soap? So I'm reading
your first month was with Philip Bosco, wasn't it?
No, I think Tom, did he come in like right at the beginning? I know he came in, subsequently later on.
I don't know if he came in right when you came in, but that was.
I think once they kind of established me as this, this pony that came to town with a talent for art and who got the attention of Craig Montgomery, right?
Right.
And once it started raising the stakes of who is this person, right? I think that's probably when Philip was brought in.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so it's like the first month that I'm there and I'm reading the script and it says, "See single tear stream down Samantha's right cheek." I'm not a good crier. I'm just not a good crier. I'm not pretty when I cry. I'm just can't cry on cue. I'm not Kim Zimmer who can say which eye.
God, I know.
You know what I mean? And so I actually packed a raw onion in my backpack that day for work. And I gave it to the makeup department and I said, "If I need it." you know what to do. Help me
Oh,
out.
that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I don't,
That's so great.
yeah. So
I don't
but
know if I can't remember if I were there or not for that scene, but I don't think I was, but I remember you were able to conjure tears after a while, but that's so funny. And you're right about Kim Zimmer. I mean,
yeah.
Kim Zimmer could tell a joke, laugh,
Right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, turn to camera, drop the tear, and then finish the joke. I mean, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some folks on our show who could do that too.
Right.
But I mean,
That's an art.
That's crazy.
I'll tell you a funny Philip Bosco story, and that was he was doing a play on Broadway during one of his runs with us because he'd come in for like a week, a couple days a week, or for like 2 weeks at a time. And he's there at 7 a.m. rehearsal, right? And he says, "You people are insane."
Yeah.
I get off the stage, right? I get home at 1 o'clock in the morning. By the time I've read the New York Times, and settled down, it's like 3 a.m. and I've got to get up in 2 hours to come work with you guys. You're crazy.
It's so true.
But he was so good, and
God.
it was such an honor to,
I know. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. I mean,
that was the cool thing about World Turns. I mean, you show up and there's Philip Bosco. Okay, hello. Or there's Claire Bloom.
Right.
Oh, hello. How are you? I mean, just crazy people on that. And it did happen. Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's right. That's right. Nice, Alan. Good for you.
Who was that? I missed that.
Orlena Grimaldi, Damien's mother.
Oh, right. Claire Bloom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So,
that was huge.
I loved her.
But that was
her. And Sam got to do a lot with Patrick Tovat too, right? Cal, did you get to do?
Yes, he was actually the one who came over my shoulder where I was taking notes on my script with the hardcover, and he said, "Yeah, you'll lose that in a few weeks." But we didn't really have a storyline, but it was always those Gone with the Wind
moments.
Scenes.
Yeah.
No, he was a great guy. I mean, I have to tell you, everybody on World Turns was. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better deep end of the pool to work with. To learn from. I learned from everybody. I mean, it's one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. I was not good at reading as a kid, like with retention and comprehension, right? And so to go home with a script when you've got a front burner storyline and you've got 30 pages of dialogue to memorize, right?
Yeah.
It was hard. Like that muscle. I had to push that thing as hard as I could. And I remember, this is a funny story. At least I think it's funny. I think it was a New Year's Eve party. And so a few of the cast members were there, and my apartment was such on the downstairs level was a living room, and right next to it was a second bedroom where I had my stereo that was hooked up to these huge clip speakers in my 12-foot high ceilings, right? And Allison Rice Taylor goes into the second bedroom and hits play on the cassette player. In that cassette were my rehearsal lines. Because I was not great at memorization, I would record everything, walk around my apartment recording, and then I would play it back while I was doing what I had to do. And here it is being broadcast in the middle of a party of me saying, "Oh, Samantha, why don't you think say?" Well, listen, you don't understand,
Oh,
and I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. But
my God.
Fun memory. It's a fun.
Oh, memory. That's fun. So, I thought where you were going with. I thought this was a scene of a New Year's Eve party. This was like the real life. This is real life. Oh my God!
Alcohol was involved. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Clip speakers,
crazy.
and there's no better speaker for you audiophiles out there to replicate the human voice than Clip speakers.
Clips. Yeah.
Paul Clips from Arkansas.
There you go.
Wow.
Built the horns that replicated the vocal timbre better than any other.
Those were monsters.
So your voice was ringing loud and clear.
But that was the way that I trained that muscle, that memorization skill,
Everybody has to find their way to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's an onion in your backpack or,
or if it's a having to do scenes near a drawer, as our wonderful deceased buddy Benjamin Hendrickson did. He had to have a drawer nearby because he's like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How you doing? You know, I mean, that thing was in his hand until the red lights went on, and it was gone. And then, of course, he nailed it. Except one time. One time, I had a scene. I had a scene where he was sneaking around investigating, and this was a later Sam scene with Sherry. And I had this monologue. I'm trying to convince her to come back. And I'm telling her all the terrible things I've done and blah, blah, blah. It's like 3 straight pages of a monologue. And and then he comes on and he basically has to say, oh, yeah, uh-huh, okay. Well, I'm not sure about that, right? Those are his lines.
Right.
And he screws up the last one, completely screws it up and goes, and they go, cut. And I looked at him. We looked at each other, and he goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so scared." We had to do the whole thing over again. And I nailed it so far. And I was like,
"Oh my Lord, that's Benjamin. A good story."
Oh my God, yeah. Sometimes those happen where you got those. Always felt bad being in a scene where somebody had a 2-page monologue. It's essentially a monologue that you're just sort of going, "Oh, really? Oh, really? Oh, that's fascinating," you know, and that's all you have to do. And they have to memorize all this stuff.
Exactly. What a muscle, right? You develop.
Yeah, that's it. It is a muscle. You're right.
Crazy. Yeah. What a muscle you guys. The hardest work you guys had to do.
Yeah.
Tommy, before we let you go, tell us, you had your 4th.
Yes. Oh, Asher Sands Dominguez. Sands is my mother's maiden name. So that's a nice tip of the hat to her. She's she left us in 1997, actually, but that's nice. She's smiling somewhere. Yeah. And he's beautiful. It went well. My youngest daughter, just everything went beautifully, and she's at home now where I am, and we're my wife and I are just helping out as much as we can. But yeah, 4 grandkids. Everybody says that's it, but we have 2 girls, 2 boys, which is wonderful. And what a kick. I mean, I probably look exhausted because we've been running around with our toddler, the older sister, taking care of her. And man, that, you know, it takes a few days at this age to kind of ramp up to that schedule. It does, but there's nothing better, and we're just so blessed and happy, and it's all good. It's all really good.
That's really
thank you.
Stopping by, Tom. So great to see you.
Well, I appreciate it, Brooke. So wonderful to see you.
You too. I always adore
you never
you.
left.
I always adore you. Yeah.
Likewise. So take care, y'all.
All right, you too.
Bye, Tom.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. That was a really nice surprise, Alan. I really appreciate that. Tom is one of my favorite takeaways from, my soap opera days. Tom and Liz and Scott and Ellen Dolan. I mean, just
isn't she the best?
Oh my God, it's the energy of that woman.
I mean, and a funny woman.
Oh, serious? Crazy, wonderful.
Seriously, a hoot.
I remember we did a scene.
Margot was not that. So I would love people to see Ellen, because
have you tracked her down? Has she been on your show yet?
Yeah, we keep in touch. Yeah. She's writing. Okay. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for her and some project I know she's got in the she I think they left they were living in the Hamptons and now they're in upstate New York, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. And her daughter's out of college.
Oh my. Wow. It all happens, time does fly by, right?
It's crazy. Speaking, your son, Jace, you said, single motherhood. Was wanting a child something you always dreamt of?
Always. If you ask any of my family members, they would paint this picture of me describing how I wanted to be, overweight, round, and soft with a little bun at the back of my hair with like 3 kids cuddling around my legs, and reading them stories. And like I have one older sister. There's 12 years difference between us. So it's almost, there were many years where it was like being an only child, right? And I love my sister dearly, but I just wanted to be part of a bigger family. I always yearned for that. So it's like I grew up in a tennis family, which was great, but I always felt vulnerable out there on the other side of the net, right? So I joined the basketball team in 5th grade because I was a part of the team, and so literally, I mean, just to transition into this, I used to look at As the World Turns cast as my teammates. It was the best game in town, and I had as important a role as far as like to keep the ball moving. You know what I mean? And I had to really step it up because these were my teammates. I always looked at it that way, and I just remember those scenes with Liz. Man, you better show up on your toes that day, but she really taught me how to be a good listener. Everybody did. But Liz was the first one where I just learned so much from her approach to everything. She was a great mentor.
I can only imagine as somebody who is in this profession being, right, first of all, just even having the opportunity, even if you never worked with her, having the opportunity to watch her work is a free acting class in and of itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So like, you had both opportunities. You could watch her with anybody else, and then you had the gift of
in with her. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really, that's an incredible, she was just special.
Right. And let one single tear stream down. She could do that, Yeah. She was great.
So where does the name Jace come from?
Jace basically, when I was considering single parenthood, there were like 5 different names. I wanted to, work a Hawaiian name in there somewhere. And so his middle name is Kaikane, which means the strong ocean. And as far as Jace, I remember on my list was the name Winslow, because I remember when I drove cross country one year, I went through Winslow, Arizona, and I thought Winslow Alexander was like, and it just, he didn't fit that, no offense to the Eagles, but, so Jace was one of those names. I remember I was pregnant and I came home from working at the Fox News channel at that time. And I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching a rerun of Law and Order. And there is an episode directed by Jace Alexander, who turns out to be Jane Alexander, the actress's son. And he's a director. He directed numerous episodes of Law and Order.
Now that you say that, I've seen his name.
Yeah. And I'm looking at that name and I'm like, because we've got a 4-syllable last name, Alexander. So my sister's name is Brett. My name is Brooke. Mom and Dad were Bob and Jane. So single syllable, 4 syllables. It kind of rolls off your tongue a little bit better. So that's why Winslow wasn't going to be in there. And so I just looked at that name Jace, and it struck me how similar it was to my mother's name, Jane, right? Now, both my parents passed. Actually, my father died while I was working on As the World Turns and doing a play at the same time. And it was just like, it was sensory overload, right? But so as far as being a single mother, I chose to bring a child into the world on my own, right? I'm keeping my last name, Alexander, and I'm thinking about how the name Jace looks so much like my mother's name, Jane, when you write it out. And so first of all, I didn't know the sex of my child when I was pregnant. So that in the delivery, it was like, it's a boy. And we've got all women in my family. I mean, like women, like back to back. And here out comes a penis. And I'm like going, all right, rock and roll. What are we going to do now? Right. And I sat with it for a couple of days before I gave him his name. And Jace was it was it. And it had nothing to do. I didn't know anything about Jace Alexander at the time. Like I didn't know that his mother was Jane Alexander, but there's that parallel too, and doing a charity thing that Jane Alexander was at, and they got her to autograph a note for me saying, Brooke, dear Brooke, I wish you all the best. Love forever, Jane Alexander. And I was just like, that was just so sweet,
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So he's 20 years old. He might be showing. Actually,
Yeah.
I think he is here. Okay. I
Yep.
told him to skedaddle.
Yeah.
with
And
the
I know
dog.
you have to go do something. I just quickly,
Yeah.
you spent time doing hosting work.
Right.
How did that happen? And talk about working with David Forsyth on SoapNet. Do you
Love that, man. Have you
I,
tracked him yet?
I never met David Forsyth. I've
Yeah.
heard wonderful things about him.
He is such a gem of a human being, basically SoapNet, I was out in where was I? No, I guess I was in New York when that happened. And they hired me and David, and it was I forget. I think we used to do 5 shows in a day or so. Yeah. But it was great. It was all on teleprompter, which was, I had really tried to hone my teleprompter skills just because I have this voice, I have this presence. It was kind of a natural, tangent or road to peel off onto. And so doing SoapNet, and then David, he's like, why did they cast me? I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, David, all you need to do is talk to the camera like you're talking to your scene partner, And I said, and you're so handsome. It doesn't matter anyway what comes out of your mouth, really, But he is a stellar performer and consummate professional. And I've looked him up on social media. I can't quite pin down where he is. Last I knew, he had a house by the river in Delaware, and with global warming, I hope that house is still there. But he was a sweetheart of a guy. We had a good time working together, and it was fun. Here we were talking about soaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jonathan Reiner says she was fabulous and made my words sing. Jonathan was one of the producers on that show.
Oh my God, that is so sweet. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. That is so nice to hear. Because I'll be honest with you, Alan. I really, with the caliber of performers and actors that I was working with, right, and the body and the breadth of their work and professionalism, I was really afraid. I mean, like the same way that I packed that raw onion in my bag, because it was like the bar was so high and I wasn't sure if I could get there. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. So to hear feedback like that, to hear comments like that, thank you. Thank you. Was it Jonathan you said?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate your words. They mean a lot to me,
And I mean, you had the opportunity to interview legends. Prince,
yes. So
I mean, like, come on. What?
Well, okay. So that walking and talking thing at the same time, right? That I was really good at. Basically, I rented out a studio in Long Beach to practice working with a teleprompter, and from there, that was when my hosting career kind of dovetailed, and to get the chance to audition for CNN for a new music show that they were launching. I think it was 1998, and I love music. Oh my Lord. I grew up, my sister's 12 years older than I am, right? I grew up on Steely Dan. 1991, I'm interviewing, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. I'm sitting there. I sat down with Prince. I sat down with Cher. I spent 3 days in the desert with Sting. I mean, it was just crazy. South Africa. I sat down with the 3 tenors. It was the best opportunity for a girl like me, who, like, I'm not the best crier, so I'm not the best dramatic actress.
But you knew your music.
Well, I knew I love music. And so I showed up as much as a fan, and also I was curious. I wanted to hear what they had to say, so it was really, it was the best job in the world,
I mean, it's the same thing, doing this.
Yeah.
What you and I, as hosts, you have to listen.
Absolutely. And Alan, congratulations on your career. I know this sort of was kind of a fluke as it started during COVID and everything, but you just rolled with the upward climb, and I'm really proud of you to see that you've taken it to the level that it is.
Oh, thanks. I have fun doing it.
I can tell.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And the fans love it. So thank you. I'm so glad we were able to do this. I'm so glad your schedule allowed us to push it an hour.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, it's technology, and everything. So no, I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad you tracked me down. I'm sorry I was a little coy in the beginning. It's just, I don't know. It wasn't that I was avoiding it. It's just I didn't get all of your you reached out to me through social media or through LinkedIn or something, and there's
I don't even remember. Who knows at this point? I don't remember.
We found each other, and thank you to Brett Helm, right?
Yeah, Brett's the best. Well, you take care. I hope to meet you in person one day.
I hope so too. I'll let you know if I ever get back to New York, and same if you're ever out in Southern California. I'd love to meet up in person. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to all of your fans that tune in, that still keep the torch alive for storytelling, and I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity that I had to work with all the great directors and writers and actors on World Turns, right? And also the fans. I mean, it was an amazing experience, so I'm very grateful for you tracking me down and creating this moment. So thank you. It's a big, warm fuzzy.
Have a great afternoon.
You too, Alan.
Bye-bye.
Right. Well, aloha.
Aloha. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks to Brooke and Tom for spending some time here and looking back on their time on As the World Turns. And please join me on Friday when As the World Turns executive producer Lawrence Queso joins us to look back at producing over 1,700 episodes from 1989 to 1995. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you like today's episode, please click the like button. It always helps. And remember, you can download audio versions by searching The Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I will see you on Friday. Stay safe as always.